Hi, I'm John Marshall. Thanks for stopping by to find out more about my Textile of the Month group, Deluxe Sample Editions. Over the years, I've had many requests for a little bit more opulent deluxe version of the samples that I've been putting out. So here I've increased the size of the samples I'm offering to you, and the actual samples themselves vary a bit from those in the original collection, and in many cases offer more samples than were otherwise presented. So let me take a moment to share with you the format and the range of samples I've included in these three independent sets. Let's start with Collection 1, the Deluxe Edition. You'll find that there are well over a dozen samples, all large format. All three sets are housed in these traditional blonde wood boxes, the types of boxes that house the most exquisite type of Japanese goods. I've included a ribbon to make it easier for you to remove the samples from the box itself. Let's take a look at each sample, a couple of them, so you can see the format. Each sample is mounted in such a way as to allow you to view both the front and the back, which is so important, of course, to weavers and dyers when you're examining things. And each and every sample has a printed text associated with it describing that specific example, which is printed on a kimono-shaped card and floated in the casing itself. You'll also find, when appropriate, additional bits of fabric included. In this case, for the kanoko shibori piece, you'll see that there's actually a fully tied piece, which is quite stiff, along with an untied, not yet expanded sample to give you a full appreciation of what goes into these exquisitely detailed bits of silk. In addition, you'll see the oboro bingata, which is somewhat similar to the kimono behind me. There's the kanoko, which we just discussed. There's shifu, the hand-woven Japanese paper. Nishiki ori, urushi ori, lacquer weaves. There's 24-karat gold karo ori weaves. Included are hand-dyed suminagashi, a type of Japanese marbling. There's Oshima silk, there's triaxial silk, we have kumihimo ori, which is a woven type of kumihimo, mondo, which is a figurative pattern woven into the silk with or without additional colors, and then of course there's the minsuzure, which is a very delicate type of tapestry weave, there's kusaki zome with the natural dyes, there's cut and uncut silk velvet as the highlight of the season. Now, as we go into the second series, you'll find that there's an equally interesting range of textiles available to you, formatted in exactly the same way, in the beautiful blonde wood box. And with the previous collection, often, in order to help you fully understand the type of textile being presented, more than one sample needs to be included for that particular topic. In this case, it's yuzen zome, and there is both a hand-painted version as well as a more printed version of the same type of text. I'll give you a sense of the difference in quality, allow you to really look at it, feel it, and check out the differences. Then, of course, there's another type of tapestry. This type is called honsuzure, which is the type more associated with Kyoto, the very densely packed, hand-woven with the fingernails type of tapestry. And then there are variations on ikat. In this case, there's meisen ori, in which the warp is printed and then hand woven. There's saga nishiki, mother of pearl, that's been laminated to paper, shredded and hand woven. Kyokechi clamping, edo komon in its mind-boggling minute patterns, sakiori rag weaving, kinkoma couching, moriage, which is a type of built-up gold on silk. And then, of course, there's minomushi, which are the bagworm casing designs that are appliqued on silk. And as the grand finale, I've included a hand-woven platinum sample. And now for the third collection within this deluxe series, I've decided to cluster the first couple of months together with similar weaves. Weaves that, although are not produced the same way, can easily be confused for one another. So I thought it best to clump them. In this case, what you're looking at is a type of weaving that's called kushiori, okay, for the weft thread in this case. Kushiori is a weave in which a comb is used to manipulate the fibers to create patterning. In the top sample, The kushiori technique using a comb was used to create this beautiful undulating wave pattern, very transparent gossamer type of silk. The white sample, on the other hand, is technically called mizuori, although it's the same technique. For those of you who are familiar with Noh theater costumes, you'll have come across this mizuori in the past. Keeping with the theme of kushiori, comb manipulated fiber, I've included two different varieties here. A kimono version, in which the warp threads in this case have been nudged side to side, and then also a heavier gold-wrapped thread in which the warp threads have been moved back and forth and was originally used for an obi. Here we see what's called namiori, and even though it looks very similar to the kushiori, this one was produced by preparing a series of undulating beading bars in different gradations to help create a repetitive pattern of waves. And then lastly, what I've presented within this cluster is a weave called yoroke ori. Yoroke means to stumble or meander or stagger, much like a drunkard might after a night of revelry. And the undulating lines in this case are created by a very unique reed and beater bar in which the tines are prepared in fan shapes, allowing the warp threads to be moved in and out at the discretion of the weaver. And the last within this cluster is a technique called tsukuiori. Tsukuiori makes use of a miniature shuttle to pick certain warp threads and basically create a tapestry weave. So you can see all of these techniques leave you with a manipulated warp or a manipulated weft. All appear to be somewhat similar in the final product, but each has a very different approach. These are the kinds of things we go over during our sessions, which I hope you'll be able to join us for. Now moving right along, we have other samples such as kiribame. Kiribame is a quilting technique, but it's actually an inlay technique more than anything else, very uniquely Japanese. There is rozashi, which is an embroidery technique, several varieties of rozome, which is batik. We have one of my favorites, higetsumugi, in which the thrum threads are tied in such a way to leave a somewhat bearded effect on the fabric. There's a really fascinating technique included called mayusugata, in which the worms are laid out on a tray and allowed to meander to create a non-woven silk sheet, which is then dyed and prepared for garments. Included are samples of wazarasa, type of Japanese printing technique, unique to Japan. Tanzen is a type of fabric used in the padded men's clothing of the North. And then, as always, I like to end on a special note, and so I've included inden. Inden makes use of stencils very similar to those used for edokomon to create minute patterns, although rather than dye or resist being pushed through, real lacquer is pushed through, normally onto deerskin, and this was used in olden times for the garments and suits of armor worn by warriors, but in more contemporary times, the same techniques were applied to silk and used in kimono. So I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. I hope it piques your interest, and I hope you'll consider joining us. And feel free to refer to my website for more information. See you soon. Bye-bye.